The airport smelled like metal and rain that hadn't fallen yet, the kind of air that carried violence before it arrived. Engines idled in the distance like restless beasts, waiting for permission to wake. Isabella stood near the convoy without realizing she had stopped breathing. Marco noticed first. Not her fear, but her stillness. That dangerous kind of stillness that only comes when something inside a person recognizes a grave it once escaped. "You don't have to come," he said, voice low, clipped, as if offering mercy he didn't fully believe in. "I already am inside it," she replied. That was all. No explanation, no softness. Something in her tone made Luca shift uneasily, hand drifting closer to his jacket. Victor didn't move. He was watching Isabella like she had just become a different species. A woman who no longer belonged to the category of prey. The doors of the black SUV slammed shut and the convoy moved. Inside the vehicle, silence wasn't empty. It was crowded. Marco's men checked weapons. Luca kept glancing at Isabella like she might suddenly explode into betrayal. Victor stayed forward, calm, calculating. Isabella looked out of the tinted glass at New York sliding by in blurred fragments. She saw reflections instead of reality. Her face layered over the city, as if she was already disappearing again. But something had changed. She wasn't disappearing anymore. She was remembering. The Morty estate didn't come back as a picture. It came back as fire behind her eyelids. Heat that had learned her name. The smell of burning wood mixed with silk curtains. Screams that were once voices she trusted. Her mother's hand pushing her down behind a stone table. "Don't look," her mother had whispered in Sicilian. Not a request, a command of survival, but Isabella had looked anyway, and that was the moment she stopped being a child. A sudden jolt pulled her back to the present. The convoy slowed near a restricted terminal, private security, too many guards, too much discipline. Marco leaned forward slightly. "He's already here." Isabella didn't ask who, she already knew. Enzo Russo never arrived like prey. He arrived like order disguised as chaos. The first gunshot didn't sound loud. It sounded final. A door on the far side of the terminal burst open. Men in black suits moved fast, professional, Enzo's guards. Not soldiers, not thugs, something more dangerous, believers. Marco's voice cut through the cabin. Now, the doors flew open. Air rushed in like a warning, and then everything became motion. Isabella moved without thinking. Not like someone entering a war, but like someone returning to one she had survived before. Her heels hit concrete. Her breath sharpened. Luca and Victor fanned out beside Marco. Gunfire cracked against steel pillars. The sound didn't echo, it multiplied. A man stepped into Isabella's path. Young, nervous eyes. He raised his weapon too late. Marco didn't hesitate. One shot. Clean, controlled. The man dropped like a sentence that lost its ending. Isabella didn't flinch. Marco noticed that too. A quiet shift passed between them, something neither of them named. Not trust. Not yet, but recognition of something dangerous growing in the same direction. They pushed deeper into the terminal, and then they saw her. A girl, maybe 12. Sitting behind a glass partition meant for cargo inspection. Hands trembling, alive. Luca swore under his breath. They kept her close. Victor was already moving. "She's the leverage." Isabella stopped walking. The girl's eyes met hers through the glass. Something in Isabella fractured, not outwardly, not visibly, but internally, like a sealed door cracking open after years of pressure. She had once been that girl, not in age, in helplessness. Marco gave a silent order. The glass didn't break, it surrendered. One precise charge, controlled, surgical. The girl didn't scream when they pulled her out. She clung instead, instinctively. Like survival finally had a shape. Isabella didn't touch her. She couldn't, because touching her meant admitting what she had lost the right to feel. Then the second wave hit. Enzo appeared. Not running, not hiding, walking. through smoke and shattered light, as if the chaos belonged to him, as if violence was just another language he spoke fluently. He stopped when he saw Isabella. Everything else faded. Even Marco's weapon lowered slightly, not in weakness but in calculation, because Enzo wasn't looking at Marco, he was looking at her. For the first time, Isabella felt the air change temperature around her body. Recognition, then disbelief, then something far worse, memory. "No," Enzo whispered, not in fear, in correction. As if reality had made a mistake, Isabella's throat tightened. The world narrowed until there was only him, the man who had burned her life into ash and called it necessity. Marco noticed the shift instantly. "You know him." It wasn't a question. Enzo's gaze sharpened. "Isabella Morti," the name hit the air like a detonated secret. Luca reacted first. "Morti. That family is dead," Victor finished, quieter. Enzo smiled faintly, but it wasn't warmth. It was architecture, a structure built from justification. "Not all of them." Isabella took one step forward before she realized she had moved. Marco didn't stop her. That mattered more than it should have. Enzo studied her like a theorem he had once solved and forgotten. "You survived the fire." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "You started it." A pause. Even the gunfire outside felt distant now. Enzo tilted his head slightly. "I ended what was already collapsing. Your family didn't die because of me, Isabella. They died because they were already weak enough to be replaced." Something in Marco's expression changed, interest turning sharper, more dangerous. But Isabella wasn't listening to him. She was inside the memory again. Fire, smoke, the ledger hidden behind a false wall, the betrayal that didn't look like betrayal until it was too late. Enzo continued, voice calm, almost instructive. "Loyalty is a romantic myth. The Mortys believed in it, that's why they burned." Isabella's hands trembled once, then stopped. Marco stepped closer to her side, not protective, observing, measuring. "You're the architect," Marco said. Enzo gave a small nod. "I build systems. Families are just unstable versions of the same thing." Isabella's breath turned sharp. Something inside her, years of silence, began to collapse. "You didn't just betray them," she said slowly. "You designed their end." Enzo didn't deny it. That was worse. Victor's voice cut in, tense. "Marco, we need him alive." Marco didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on Isabella, because she wasn't shaking anymore. She was aligning. Something dangerous clicked into place inside her posture. Not rage, not grief, purpose. Enzo noticed it too. His gaze softened slightly, almost admiring. "You were never meant to survive that night," he said, "and yet here you are, which means something went wrong or something evolved." Isabella stepped closer. The distance between victim and executioner shrinking. "I didn't evolve," she said quietly. "I adapted." Enzo's smile faded for the first time. Outside, more gunfire erupted. The world outside was collapsing into controlled war, but inside this narrow space, everything had narrowed into a single axis: truth and memory. Marco raised his gun slightly, not at Enzo, but ready. Enzo looked past him. "Do you know what she is?" he asked Marco calmly. "She's not a survivor, she's unfinished business." Marco didn't respond. Because for the first time he wasn't sure which side of that sentence belonged to Isabella. Isabella reached for something inside her coat. Not a weapon, something older. A small, burned fragment of paper she had carried for years without knowing why she kept it. The edge of a ledger page. Enzo saw it, and for the first time something like tension broke his composure. "That shouldn't exist," he said quietly. Isabella's voice dropped. "You left traces, even architects leave fingerprints." Enzo took one step back, not fear, calculation. "Then you've been following me longer than I realized," he said. Isabella's eyes didn't blink. "I've been living inside what you destroyed," she answered. A silence fell so complete it felt like pressure. Then Enzo spoke again, softer now. You think you're here for revenge? Isabella didn't answer. Marco watched both of them like a man realizing he had stepped into a war that predated him. Enzo's final words were almost gentle. No, he said. You're here because I needed you to be. Isabella froze. The sentence didn't make sense at first. Then it did. And something inside her face changed, subtle, devastating. Because buried in Enzo's tone was the implication of design. Not accident, not survival, but intention, her existence placed. Before she could speak, Enzo's gaze shifted behind her, toward the burning terminal, toward collapsing order. And now, he said quietly, you're finally close enough to understand why. Marco moved forward, but too late. Enzo slipped backward into the chaos as if it had always been his doorway. And Isabella stood still, holding the burned fragment of a past she no longer understood. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure if she had escaped the fire, or been delivered by it. If you stopped here, you only know half the truth. The real story, the part that will shock you, move you, and stay with you, is still coming. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and come back. Because we're not